So we have been looking at this passage from Marx's Grundrisse. But if capital appears as a product of labor, the product of labor also appears as capital. No more as a simple product, not as exchangeable good, but as capital. Objective for labor becomes mastery, has command over living labor. We had a bit of a look at this sentence, so probably we can go through it again. So we will find something more than what we did last time. So capital. So let's write. So capital. We defined capital last time. Yeah. And then you have labor. And capital is appear as product of labor. So, but if capital appears as a product of labor, and this can be anything, it can be a car, it can be this product, it can be a shirt, so this car or this shirt is capital because we are producing it, not obviously people are going to use it otherwise how it, but not just for simple use from the point of capitalist anyway, or no from the point of simple exchange, so we can buy something else, but as capital. That is, we are selling this, exchanging this, selling this, so people use it, but so we can get money and we can invest it and produce more car. So that's the process. So car become capital, and this capital is the product of labor. This capital is the product of labor. But if capital appears as the product of labor, the product of labor also appears as capital. So capital appears as the product of labor. But this product of labor also appears as capital in the sense that that's its primary function. So product of labor is not primarily the creation of the labor power or the labor of the worker. So, but if capital appears as the product of labor also appears as the capital. So instead of this product being primarily the expression of the creativity of creative power and godlike power, which is labor power of human being, its main function is primarily as a capital, and its appearance as creative expression of the creativity of the labor power of a human being vanishes or diminishes more than it did in any other system. So, but if capital appears as the product of labor also appears as capital, no more as a simple product, so not just a simple product for use, for example, or exchange, not as exchangeable, but as capital. Its primary function is as capital. Its function is to produce more, so we can produce more, we can produce more, and we can produce more, so we can accumulate more. So objective for labor becomes mastery, has command over living labor. So what is objective hard labor? So labor power, or sometimes also living labor. This labor expresses, or for Marx, or represent, if you will, what is primarily our nature. We looked at this yesterday, primarily as our nature. And what is our nature or essence? Human essence. We are gods, or godlike creatures, or godlike beings. We are creators. And this creative power, or creating power, is manifested in our labor power, in work, in labor power. And this is a very common theme in Marx, and not just in Marx, you will find it in Locke as well. We will look at Locke sometimes. So this primacy of labor and work in John Locke, and labor in Marx, this primacy of labor power. So this labor power for Marx manifests human essence, our very nature, who we really are. What differentiates us from all other beings, from animals, for example. That's labor power, this creative power, which is a godlike power. And through these using power, we create things, and we fulfill our wishes and desires. Like God, who does what He wills, we do what we will through this power, and we transform through this power, like God transformed through His creative power. We transform through this creative power. We take what we find in nature, and transform it. Transform through this creative power, which is labor power. That's what in Grundrisse Marx talk about, not just labor, but labor power, living labor, to show that very things. So this transformation of nature, and we create a new nature, which is not nature which was out there, but human creation. And this is not just to satisfy our needs, because that doesn't distinguish us from animals, and obviously that part we share with animals. Not just to eat, not just to use, because at that level we are still animals, and not to exchange at that level we are probably higher animal, but to create our world according to our own plan and wishes and image. And by transforming nature like that, we create a new reality. So we realize our nature. We realize our nature, we express our nature. And maybe we fulfill our nature. So I guess then we are happy or whatever. We are content with ourselves. We are not frustrated. We are at peace with ourselves or whatever. But when this labor power, this godlike power, is appropriated by a bunch of capitalists, and this labor power is objectified as the means for accumulation. That objectified power is no longer the expression of our creativity, our godhood. We don't find ourselves expressed in those products. We don't enjoy the look of our creation the way God of Bible did when he created first day or second. Then he looked and he created day, and then he created night, and he was happy, or whatever the words are there. So in a similar way, he can't express himself or herself anymore, because his creative power has been solidified, has been imprisoned or entrapped, or whatever word you want to use, by capitalists for the specific purpose of accumulation. So what has become is the living power, labor power, which is an end in itself, in that it expresses the essence of a creative being, godlike being, has become an instrument of something else. So it's no longer a creative power, godlike power, because God's will is not an instrument of something else. Everything else is the instrument of His will. So this godlike creature and power is so that's the whole thing about living power becoming the object, becoming objectified, and labor becomes mastery. So the capitalist has entrapped labor power and objectified it as an instrument for something else. Labor power is no longer labor power, or living labor is no longer the expression of the will of man, is godlike, but an instrument of something abstract, which is accumulation for the sake of accumulation. And so labor power in that sense is not the means for the mastery of human over everything else, an expression of his creativity, but has become has been mastered by, and therefore frozen and objectified by something which is abstract. So this creator no longer find the expression of his creativity or her creativity and satisfaction in that way in his creation, because this is not an expression of his creativity. His creative power is used against his will, so to speak, for some other purpose other than fulfilling his or her will. So that's the nutshell, the problem of capitalism. The problem of capitalism, and that's where alienation comes. And probably I shouldn't introduce the concept of alienation here now, because we already and just probably go back and read, and then in the next video I will start with the concept of alienation. So but if capital appears as the product of labor, the product of labor also appears as capital, no more as a simple product, not as an exchangeable good, but as capital. Now, objectified labor, the labor which has been instrumentalized for the purpose of capital, becomes mastery of his living labor by the capital, or the capital has command over living labor. So living labor is being used. So living labor is no longer a living labor in that sense, and that in that sense it has been objectified. So next time I will do, it appears equally to be a result of labor, that is, the product appears as alien property. So here we need to introduce the conception of alienation. So probably I'll do it next time.